Welcome to the Billable Mom podcast, led by attorney Cari Rincker, where we discuss working motherhood, but especially geared to professional mothers who are trying to juggle their time. Our time is precious, both at work and at home. We talk time management and productivity hacks, the struggles of being a working parent, and provide a community where other billable moms are also trying to calm the chaos 6 minutes at a time. Listen to stories of other working moms, but especially lawyer moms. Navigate the waters balancing career and the ever-present demands of motherhood.
Hi, I am Cari Rincker, and I'm really excited because we have Manu Brune in the house, and I'm going to get into how I met you in just a second. But Manu is a sleep coach for children or babies, but she's so much more than that. She has a parenting coaching class, a postpartum coaching class. Manu, please introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you, Cari. It's so nice to be here today. I really appreciate you having me on the show. So as Cari said, my name is Manu Brune, and I am a certified pediatric sleep consultant. I'm also a certified postpartum doula and a certified parent coach, which essentially means that I help parents in all stages of their lives with that parent-child relationship and making sure that we've got that strong bond with our children. We're helping them to build that emotional intelligence. We're helping them to sleep properly at night. And we're really supporting parents and especially moms through each of the phases of motherhood.
So you are not only a coach, but you are a mother, and you have a business and you're a mother. So talk us through your path to becoming a professional business owner and a parent.
Yeah, definitely. So it all actually started with my firstborn. So working mom, had a baby. Like most moms, I feel like, especially didn't really want to go back to work after my maternity leave. Like I really missed humans and adults. But I was really afraid to leave my baby home alone or home with a stranger or even in daycare. And I had a lot of really bad postpartum anxiety after I had him. And he wasn't sleeping well, and I was triple feeding. So between like breastfeeding and pumping and doing like the SNS feeding with like the tube in his mouth, it was a whole thing. And so I had a really rough start to motherhood. And that's actually what spurred me into becoming a postpartum doula, because I didn't know that that was a thing when I had Benji, my firstborn. And it was just truly amazing to see that there are actually professionals out there that can come and help new moms, especially in their time of need. And I wanted to be one of those. And as he grew older, he wasn't sleeping well. And I thought, well, maybe becoming a pediatric sleep consultant would really help me not only get him sleeping, but would really add on to what I was doing as a postpartum doula and helping all those new moms, especially in like the newborn and the infant stage. And that spurred from there. And then he's 8 months old, and he was a fertility baby. We went through fertility treatments in order to conceive. And I was told I couldn't get pregnant naturally, which was a lie, because I got pregnant naturally when he was 8 months old. And it honestly was so scary to me because I'm an only child. My husband has a really bad relationship with his brother. And how do you navigate the sibling dynamic? And how do you handle 2 under 2? And, all those questions, all of that concern. And I just wanted to make sure that I was doing everything that I possibly could to be a good mom, to make sure that he wasn't going to feel left out with us bringing home a new sibling, to keep that bond together, and to just help make sure that I was still maintaining that bond with him, so he would grow into an emotionally intelligent human being and know that he can always come to me for anything. And so that's when I found the Giant Institute for Parenting and started going through parent coaching classes. And everything's kind of evolved from there. And that's how my business started as a postpartum doula, and then evolved into the full parenting aspects of things.
Wow, I can have to admit that I'd never even heard of a postpartum doula before. I did have a doula when I was pregnant with Jace, so that's so informative. All right, so full disclosure, I met Manu when I was at pretty much a low point as a parent. So my son, Jace, and I know that I've disclosed this on the podcast. I had a rough year and a half with him with sleep. So I actually hired a different sleep consultant when Jace was around 9 months of age. And to make a long story short, about maybe 6 weeks of working with the sleep consultant, I'm pretty sure she fired me and was like, I'm out. Mostly because I wasn't listening to the advice that was given to me. And, I had a baby at that point in time. And the advice was I needed to put him into the crib awake. And I just wanted to snuggle my baby. And it was just very hard. But then I also really wanted to sleep. So fast forward when Jace is around 16 month-ish in a point in time. And I'm pretty sure, Manu, the night that I messaged you on Facebook was the night that I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to like put Jace in the crib. I'm going to let him cry. And within like a few minutes, he was puking, and it was just not pretty. And that was sort of the moment that I reached out to Manu. And on top of all of that, and this is a little uncomfortable for me to talk about publicly, but I have had my mother, so my son's grandmother, who has been a great support for me as a single mother, a single parent. And but at that point in time, I was very concerned about my attachment with my son, because he was starting to get very attached to my mother. And in essence, my mom kind of became a sleep prop for him, right? Like that was how he was falling asleep. So that was where I was in life when I reached out to Manu, pretty like desperate, like I need help. And so enter Manu, and we started on our sleep coaching adventure together. And, I'd like to say that right now I'm very, very attached to Jace. And, so her program really works. And so, Manu, why don't you just take a step back and like big picture and talk about your sleep coaching?
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the things that sets me apart from many of the other sleep consultants out there is that I do have the parent coaching background as well. And I've got a lot of information on temperament and attachment. And so I take a very holistic approach whenever I'm working with a newborn, a baby, a toddler. It's a very crystal clear questionnaire. Cari, you probably hate me from having to fill that out a couple of different times. It's a very like 20 question questionnaire. And then I really get to know the family, and we build a sleep plan based on those specific needs. And nothing that I do is ever going to make a parent leave their child to just cry, because one of the fundamental aspects of attachment is being seen, being soothed, and having that connection between parent and child. And so the methods that I use for sleep training typically revolve around being able to have the parent respond to their child's needs, but in an appropriate manner that still allows the child to develop these self-soothing skills and develop these skills to be able to fall asleep.
Yeah. So, it's not the Ferber method, right? It's not the cry it out, like I'm going out of the room and I'm not going to come back for a certain number of minutes either, initially at least. And so do you want to talk maybe sort of broad strokes on sort of what that looks like and why your method might be better than other methods?
Sure. Yeah. So, for each individual family, I choose a different method based on what works for them. In your case, we did what we call the chair method. And so that was having you in the room next to his crib, the first couple of days, and then moving you, to the middle of the room, and then slowly moving you out of the room. So it's almost like a fading level of comfort through the sleep training process. But initially, it's having the parent right there in the room, responding to those cries. I think with you, we did like voice touch. I don't know if we did any picking up. I don't remember if we did any picking up of Jace, but we did voice and touch, and just had you there being able to respond to his cues as soon as he starts crying, especially when you first put him down. And I know it's really hard on moms and it's really hard on parents those first few days, because you're right there in that room with the baby or with the infant or toddler, and it can really hurt your heart. But the reason that I choose to do that, again, goes back to that attachment, right? Because you want to have that connection. You want to show your child, I'm here, I hear you, and I'm holding my boundary. And in this case, the boundary is sleep. So I'm here, I hear that you're upset. It's okay for you to be upset, and I'm not giving in. I'm going to hold my boundary, but I will be here to help soothe you and help you settle into sleep.
So you warned me that it was going to be hard, right? And I want the listeners to know that night one for me was really hard. It took Jace, I think, 2.5 hours or so to get to sleep that night. Night two, it was like 3 minutes. So, and listen, I fully know that every child and every family is going to have a different experience. And I have most certainly have had struggles with Jace since then. So I want my listeners to know, I do not put Jace to sleep and he goes to sleep in 3 minutes. So it's not happening. And last night he was making a big tower of all of his animals. He now has a snake from the zoo, all sorts of things. I don't love looking at a stuffed animal snake, but it is a tough hill to get through, but you have to get through that hill. And I know you've had parents who have a really hard date night one, hard night two, and they just give up. I mean, what message would you give to those people?
Yeah, I've definitely had parents like that. And I think it's just all about the consistency, because it is going to be hard, and it's going to be harder given that we are focused on that connection bond, and given that we're focused on maintaining the attachment throughout sleep training. It's going to be a lot harder on the parent probably than it is on the kid. The kid's going to be crying, the kid's going to be upset, you're going to be there trying to comfort them. But really, it's all about centering yourself as the parent before you go into the sleep training process, and trusting the process. I think that's the big thing, right? Is just making sure that you are trusting the process and trusting that you are moving the needle and moving in the direction that you're wanting to go in. And so, yeah, those parents who, they quit after night two, they typically end up still having some issues. Or, sometimes we've got parents who the first couple nights are rough. Night three is amazing. The kid's asleep within a minute, sleeps all the way through the night. And then night four is what we call a regression night. And it's back to night one almost. And parents give up on the regression night. And honestly, that is the most important night of sleep training, to hold to that consistency and to just remind yourself that you are doing this and you are making this change for your family because what you were doing before was not working. And because as parents, we need rest in order to be able to show up for our children in the best way possible.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think that I had a friend of mine who was very rigid, when my children turned, 12 months of age, I do sleep training and this is the method that I do and blah, blah, blah. But, and I love this friend. And what she really woke up for me is that sleep is important. I mean, it is not only important for the parent's health, it's also important for your child's health, right? If you're up, 4 times in the middle of the night with your kid, with your baby, it's not good for them either, right? And so I think it's hard to really put those goggles on when you're trying to navigate this. I mean, any thoughts on that?
Definitely, because an overtired child releases excess cortisol, releases excess adrenaline, and so it may not seem like your baby or your toddler is as tired as they actually are, but it's because of those excess hormones that are like flooding their bodies. And that in that perpetual state of overtiredness and the perpetual state of adrenaline rushing through their bodies or cortisol rushing through their bodies is not good for them. And then on the flip side, you're exactly right, Cari. Like as parents, we need that rest as well so that we can ground ourselves, especially in these toddler stages when our kids are starting to push their limits a little bit. So we're not yelling at them and we are responding from a place of curiosity and we are responding from a place of connection. And we can't do that if our needs are not being met. And sleep is one of the foundational needs for everybody on the planet.
So out of curiosity, because I know that you work with families with babies that I think are 4 months and older. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know you have your preferences on the best stages for sleep training and things, but for our listeners who are like, my kid's 3, my kid's 4, and they're older. I mean, is it too late for them to do sleep training?
No, it's definitely not too late to do sleep training at 3 or 4. The thing I would caution against is you've got a toddler who is in boundary pushing mode at that point, right? And so at 3 and 4, you have to approach sleep training way differently than you would at 2 or under. And more gradual process. It definitely takes a little bit longer time, and you have to have a lot more patience with your toddler at that age as well.
I just wanted to know, and I promise you this podcast is not about a commercial, for Manu and all of her services, but what I do appreciate about what you had to offer, as opposed to the first sleep coach that I work with, is that I felt like there was just ongoing support. And in fact, with Jace, I even purchased like basically a year of support, right? So it's not like just like a one and done. I'm here for you for your first week and then like good luck, So any thoughts there?
Yeah, definitely. And I really like that 1 year of support, especially when we're dealing with kids that are in the first year of their life, because there's so many sleep regressions. There's so many different things that happen developmentally in the first year of life that can impact sleep. And so it's so nice to have that additional support. But I really think one of the key reasons why my clients do as well as they do is because I've got so much support for them. And for toddlers, I do, instead of the traditional like 2 weeks of support, I'll do 4 weeks of support for them and still offer like that longer package. And it's so helpful because anything that comes up, you've got a sleep consultant in your pocket, right? And I'm very annoying to my clients too. And that, especially when you first start with the sleep training, I message you like daily. I'm like, so how did last night go? How was this nap? And giving you those tips and those tricks to center yourself and to continue with it so you can stay consistent with it.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. Although sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to quit, but you were always right there, and I'm trying to keep everybody, the ship sailing in the right direction. So I want to know too, to segue into attachment, that I did not understand at the very beginning on how in the world sleep training my child was going to somehow help my attachment with him. And so my mind has been blown through the process. So can you talk a little bit more about what is attachment and why in the world would sleep training actually improve it?
Yeah, definitely. So attachment is the quality of connection between the infant or toddler and their caregiver. And there are 4 different types of attachment. We all aim to have what we call a secure attachment. And secure attachment is created by consistent, predictable, warm, and nurturing responses to your child. Secure attachment is typically formed within the first about 3 years, and it can be something that we work on with parents of older children to reestablish that attachment bond. So if you don't have that secure attachment within that first few years of life, it's okay, because there's this thing called neuroplasticity where we can actually rewire the brain and work together to, develop that secure attachment after the fact. But there are, 4 S's, as the professionals call it, to secure attachment. It's when a child feels seen, safe, soothed, and secure. And so with what we did with sleep training, you're in the room with him. So you're responding in that consistent, predictable, warm way. And that is helping him to feel seen and soothed, 2 of the S's of attachment. And then you're not just leaving him to cry it out. You're actually helping him to feel secure in himself and his emotions, because you're there and you're showing him that your emotions are not affecting me, right? Like a child who feels like they cannot cry or they cannot get upset around their parents is somebody who probably doesn't have that strong attachment bond. But by being in the room and consistently responding to him and seeing his emotions and not running from them, like what I feel like the Ferber method kind of does, or the cry it out method kind of does, you're showing him that his emotions are safe, his emotions are okay, and they're not going to scare you away. And that's why I think you saw a shift in attachment with Jace as you were going through that sleep training process as well, because you're hitting on 3 of those 4 S's through that sleep training process.
So I'm a single parent, but for the listeners out there who are thinking, well, my child has a stronger attachment to me than the father does, or vice versa. I mean, what advice would you give to parents who are maybe struggling with a child or children being more attached to one parent over the other?
Yeah, I think it's extremely normal for children to have a parental preference. I think if you are struggling with that and, say, for instance, like with me, with my second born, he was much more attached to dad than he was to me, and it was a little painful. But just showing up consistently for your children and continuing to show up, continuing to acknowledge any emotions or feelings that they have, continuing to offer that comfort and that soothingness, offer that connection to them, is what's really going to help kind of turn that around. And if they still want dad or they still want mom instead, that's totally fine. It's not your child's job to make you feel okay, right? So
yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. So, Manu, I want to speak a little bit about your parenting coaching classes. And I actually took your class with my parents, right? So it was 3 of us that went through your program. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about that class?
Yeah, definitely. So it's what I call the 12-week transformational parenting course. And what's really cool about this is in these 12 weeks, we go through a bunch of different information. It sometimes might feel a little bit like information overload. I don't know if you ever felt that way, Cari. But we really talk about, how to set intentions as a parent and what the difference is between maybe an intention and a goal. We talk about kind of the 10 pillars of transformational parenting and how those relate to the head, the heart, and the hands of parenting. And that is completely based on nonviolent communication by, I believe Marshall Rosenberg was the one who wrote that book. And then we go into attachment. We talk about the 4 kinds of attachment. We determine what type of attachment you currently have to your parents, yourself, and then your child. And we work towards what does that secure attachment look like, because that's the ultimate goal. And then in week 5, we get into the nervous system and we talk about the different pathways, and we dive a little bit deeper into maybe where your nervous system steady state lies and how we can get you into this feeling of being centered, so that you are able to respond to your children from this place of curiosity and from this place of love and connection. And then we talk about brain science and child development and what I like to call mindsight, which is really, again, leading from curiosity. So looking underneath the surface of the behaviors to figure out what need your child is trying to convey. And then we talk about emotional intelligence, how to have empowered conversations, anger and healthy aggression, and then how to insert play into parenting, because that's just a huge, huge topic that a lot of parents, I feel like, especially first-time parents, don't really understand how they can infuse play into their parenting to help their children to overcome any potential like issues that they may be facing, or help them to express how they're feeling about certain events.
Yeah, it was a great experience. And, you know, what I liked about it too is very self-paced. I mean, we can kind of go at the pace that we felt comfortable with there, and we hit a lot of great topics. So, hey, Manny, we're going to take a quick break here from our sponsor, and when we return, I'd like to delve into your postpartum coaching as well.
Yeah.
This episode of the Billable Mom podcast is brought to you by Rincker Law PLLC, focusing in food, farm, and family. When I'm not a mother juggling two littles, I'm the principal attorney of Rincker Law, where we believe that strong communities have both strong families and a food, fiber, and agriculture system. At Rincker Law, not only do we do family and matrimonial law, but we also work with entrepreneurs and agriculture producers on business, estate, and succession planning. We are a client-focused, results-driven law practice. At Rincker Law, we also support other billable moms, not only here in the workplace at Rincker Law, but also with clients, helping them live their dreams both in business and at home. For more information, visit us at www.rinkerlaw.com. Cari Rincker, Rincker Law, Food, Farm, and Family.
All right, Manu, when we spoke prior to this podcast, I didn't even know you had a postpartum coaching class or services. So tell us more about what that is.
Yeah, definitely. So that was really founded from my postpartum doula days. There are 8 modules total, and each module has about 6, maybe 7 lessons within it, for everybody to, again, very self-paced, go in there and watch. And it's really, really beneficial to first-time moms, second-time mom, third-time moms, because your postpartum experience is different with every kid. And I'm sure you experienced that between your children as well. But you know, it's very all encompassing, right? Module 1, and this is kind of my baby. I spent 3 years creating this postpartum masterclass. So, you know, module 1 is all about how to thrive after delivery. And it really talks about, you know, I've got 4 key principles, sleep actually being one of those, that are really necessary for you to be able to thrive as a new mom after delivery. Module 2 dives really far into hormones and what your hormones are. We kind of talk about the science behind what's actually happening to these hormones to cause different, you know, emotions going on within your body. And we talk about, I have what I call my CARES framework for being able to stay present. And that's kind of my flagship framework in this course. We'll go into, you know, module 3, which is all of the physical changes that happen in your body, from like breast engorgement to postpartum hair loss to, is it normal to pee every time that you sneeze after you give birth? The answer is no. And, you know, some exercises for helping strengthen your pelvic floor muscles after delivery. Module 4 is all about emotional changes that happen. We talk a lot about postpartum blues and what that is versus postpartum depression. And then I even talk about like postpartum anxiety, postpartum rage, postpartum psychosis, like different things that can actually happen postpartum that no one really talks about, but really, really needs to be talked about out there in the world. And then module 5 goes into parenting styles and the different types of parenting styles that are currently out there that, you know, we we choose from as we go into parenting, and we talk about maybe how to break some of those generational parenting patterns. It touches a little bit on what we just talked about with the actual like parenting classes that I do, but it doesn't dive as deep into it. And then module 6 is all about just being in the weeds of postpartum. So how do you have boundaries for visitors that come to your house? How do you ask childcare questions when you're going back to work? How do you heal from postpartum tearing or scarring? How do you do pain management if you have a C-section? All of that is covered in module 6. And then module 7 is all about newborn sleep. So taking it back to sleep coaching, and how can you set up the ideal sleep environment without sleep props so that you're setting yourself up for success and you don't have to sleep train when your kid is 4, 5, 6 months, 3, 4 years old. And then finally, module 8 is it's a bonus module all about feeding. And so that one talks about the psychological aspects of choosing to breastfeed versus formula feed, talks about what that triple feeding might look like or what mixed feeding might look like. Exclusively pumping is in there. It's just very all-encompassing, and it kind of talks about the different methods of feeding you can choose and what might work best for your family based on your experience and based on your circumstances.
Sounds like a great class. I think also for women that might be pregnant or maybe in the 3rd trimester too, kind of leading to the postpartum, because you're hit with like a lot very quickly, a lot of changes that are happening all around you. So to me, I think that's phenomenal. So Manu, I'm curious if you have any products that you recommend with sleep coaching, parent coaching, or just like little hacks.
Yes, so many products that I recommend. So sleep coaching specifically, I really, really recommend getting a Hatch Rest, which is a white noise machine. I specifically really like the Rest Plus because it's got battery backup, and that battery backup, even if your power only goes out once a year, it's kind of a lifesaver. So like we had a tornado here 2 weeks ago or something, and we had to take the kids into the basement, and we were able to just unplug our Hatch and bring it down with us. So despite having to wake them up out of their beds, take them to the basement, and set up like makeshift beds on the concrete floor because our basement's not finished, they still fell right back asleep because we brought that Hatch down with us, and the white noise continued. And it was amazing because nobody's sleep was my sleep was interrupted, but their sleep wasn't interrupted. So definitely my number one product. Also highly recommend blackout blinds. And there's a specific brand on Amazon called Easy Shade blackout blinds that are so easy to put up and cover your entire window. And I really like those in addition to blackout curtains because it really gets the room dark. And especially when you're teaching a newborn or a 4-month-old, the difference between day and night, it's just a miracle to be able to have something like that. Also for postpartum, especially if you have multiple children, I highly recommend a baby carrier, and I love the Lily Baby Dragonfly wraps because they're so comfortable, and even for like larger women, they're so comfortable, and you can kind of adjust the size on it, but it already comes halfway pre-assembled, so it's not like you're trying to, wrap the baby all by yourself. You've got, that additional help there. Yeah, I mean, I could go on. I love the Nanit for a baby monitor because it gives you insights and lets you know exactly when your child woke up, how much movement is happening in their crib at night, when, if you forget when you picked them up out of the crib, you can go back and you can see like, oh, Thea woke up at 8 a.m. this morning, and that cues my brain, at least as a sleep coach, to say, okay, you woke up at 8. your wake window is 5 hours, you're going down at 1 for your nap. And it's just, you don't have to remember things because it's on your phone for you. Which is just, absolutely amazing. And then as far as like parent coaching goes, there are a few really great books for toddlers out there called Voices Are Not for Yelling, Feet Are Not for Kicking, Teeth Are Not for Biting, and Hands Are Not for Hitting. And I love those books because you can read them with your toddlers. There's even one called Calm Down Time that teaches them to take deep breaths when they're starting to get upset. Germs Are Not for Sharing. They're all written by the same author, but just, so absolutely amazing because especially if you start reading them early on in your kid's life, they reference those and you can really see them reference, oh, hands are not for hitting, or, feet are not for kicking, when they start to get frustrated. And it's just so cool to see their brains work in that way.
Oh, that's good to know. I think I just literally got Hands Are Not for Hitting. Obviously, we're having a little bit of the hitting problem happening at my house with a brother and a sister. So Jace loves his sister, but he also likes to whack her a few times too. So, but anyway, I think those are great recommendations. Thank you for that. Manu, where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on my website, which is www.beyondbirthbasics.com. I do have an Instagram, but I am really bad at posting on there because social media. I will get better one of these days.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast. I do appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Cari.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Billable Mom. At The Billable Mom, we don't pretend to have the answers, but instead have all the questions. Please find us on social media and join the conversation at The Billable Mom on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter X, Pinterest, and YouTube. We also have a Facebook group where like-minded billable moms find solidarity and provide a resource to one another. You can learn more about The Billable Mom and our picks for juggling work and motherhood at www.thebillablemom.com. You can also connect with Cari Rincker directly on social media at Cari Rincker. Until next time, let's calm the chaos 6 minutes at a time.